So another great episode of From this week. We got Tabitha's return, and that is the big question hanging over this episode. What does it mean that someone was able to leave the town and then return, and how is that return going to affect everyone in the town, and especially how people view Boyd's leadership? A lot of what is happening this season is about trying to break the town psychologically, and a lot of it is trying to get through to Boyd, but also it's about getting the town to question Boyd's leadership. That's what happens in this first scene here. When we have Randall, he was left outside by the creatures. We thought they were going to kill him. They left him alive on top of the ambulance outside the colony house, and he is here screaming about how Boyd left him behind. And Boyd's whole thing is about how he's trying to protect everybody, so he's kind of undermined by this proclamation here. Now, of course, we know the context of that scene. It was kind of a Faustian deal with the devil type situation where he basically traded Randall for the lives of everyone in the ambulance. So at the time, it definitely was the right decision. I don't know that he really had a choice in the matter, but just in this moment, it is definitely getting people to look at him a little differently, including Donna, who kind of looks at Boyd with a shock on her face, as if he betrayed what she thought of him. And if she's questioning his leadership, then things are really starting to shake up here in the town. So that, I think, is the purpose behind this scene. But I do have to wonder if something else is going to happen to Randall, because the creatures did say that we're keeping him, we're taking him. And I wonder if we might find out how these creatures come about, because we don't really know where they come from. And I think between this Randall situation and the situation with the baby that Fatima's about to have, maybe we'll find out where these creatures are coming from. I'm not so sure. Let me know what you guys think. I don't think we've seen the end of what's going to happen to Randall, though. We don't get it resolved in this episode. But here we got Christy with her leg busted from being in the bear trap last episode. And if you remember back to that episode, the bear trap kind of stopped people from arguing. So we had a bad thing that got everyone to work together and stop arguing. The bad thing being her being stuck in the bear trap. People work together. And now this episode, we have a good thing, which is Tabitha being able to leave and returning. So she was both giving us hope that there is actually a way out, but also returning so that her family doesn't think that she's dead and they don't have this lingering question of what happened to her. So that was a good thing, but it's going to tear people apart in this episode. So I find it interesting. We kind of have these mirror images. Now we're with Henry in the colony house. He's about to meet Victor, and I think they did a great job in this episode setting up this reunion that they're going to have. It's a very emotional scene, and they hold it off. And I think that really made it much more satisfying to have that catharsis at the end, because Victor is not ready for this. He doesn't know what's about to happen, and he never looked backward when he was drawing. He was always just dealing with the present moment. And I think that that is just a beautiful scene at the end when they finally reunite. But you see here, we still have Sarah being ostracized by the people in the town. People are looking at her with scorn, and rightfully so, because of some of the things that she did. So we're seeing it reinforced that she is not back in the good graces of the town yet. And we have her paired up with Victor, and I think it was really smart to pair these two characters together, because he is ostracized by choice, but not because of the bad decisions that he made, just because he wants to keep people at arm's length because he keeps losing people. And I think that's something a lot of people will relate to, because a lot of people will put up these defensive guards because they've been hurt by people before. And he's somebody who has just dealt with such constant suffering and death that he puts up these guards so he doesn't have to deal with loss. But that is getting shattered by this return of his father, somebody he long thought was dead. And they decided they're not going to go to the tunnels quite yet to get Jasper the puppet. So I'm really curious about the puppet still. I wish that they did that in this episode, but we got to focus on the characters and the drama. It's really smart. And of course, they're just trying to get us to tune back in next week, of course. So Tabitha's back. And we have Jade here. He wants to go to the bottle tree so that he can get some more clues. Jade is somebody who is trying to make sense of the chaos. So we have this theme in this episode of chaos versus order. And I think it's a spectrum, right? So we have Jade here trying to make sense, and he even talks about at the bottle tree later that these aren't just random, there are patterns at play here, and he's trying to deduce what these patterns might be. So he's on the side of order. He represents that, somebody who doesn't see things as random, that it's all going to make sense eventually. So he's on one side, and on the other side, we have characters like Julie, who are the people that just view life as random, and that there's all this chaos in the world and suffering, so almost like a nihilism on the other side. And most of the characters are somewhere in the middle. So that's one of the big themes of this episode as well, and we'll get more into that later on. So here we have Kenny and Boyd, and they're talking about how there is a creature outside of the cabins where the food is. There's something new roaming around. Next time they go out there, he's talking about how they need to go there again to get food before the next snowfall. You just know we're going to run into what that creature is, and it's not just going to be this vague mystery anymore. I have a feeling next episode or the episode after, whenever they go to those cabins next, we're going to find out what those things really are. And now we're here with Henry in Victor's room, and here Henry just comes out, says the theme of the episode, which we have the chaos and order theme. The other big theme of this episode is hope, and what hope can do and the dangers of hope. So he, when he lost his family, was most hurt by the hope that they might return. He basically put off accepting that they were dead by keeping this hope alive that they might just show up again one day. And that was what made the suffering so much worse for him. And this is again tying in with the theme at the end of last season with Boyd's wife, the ghost of Boyd's wife that he saw. She said that Boyd was just keeping hope alive, which was just prolonging people's suffering. And it's similar to what Henry is saying that he did. So here we have this big meeting. Everybody's here to learn about what's going on with Tabitha, and it's going to be a contentious one. And now we got Julie. She's not going to the meeting. She's not interested in it because she already knows everything that was there. She's coming here to escape. She's going to this window that she looked out when she first showed up here at the Colony House. It was like first season, one of the first episodes. And we have this flashback here where they're talking about how if you get up high enough, a nightmare can become a dream. And I think that it's kind of symbolic of how when you're in the thick of it in life and you're going through suffering, that's all you really see at the ground level is your suffering. But when you take a step back and look at things from a higher perspective, you start to see the bigger picture and you start to see the beauty of everything. And that you can't really do it at ground level because you need hindsight, you need greater vision, you need to understand things outside of your suffering. So I think that that is really what they're trying to say with this scene, and she comes up here for this escape. And it's also a pun in this scene because she's looking for certain substances that will help her feel some escapism, you could say. And if you get up high enough, a nightmare can become a dream. So that's definitely a pun, in my opinion, in this moment. And here's a beautiful scene with Sarah and Victor, and they're talking about how Victor's not ready to see his father yet, and how he never took the time to think about the past before he got here. He's just focused on the present. Again, that's the same thing with the looking through the window at the Colony House. It's like he's stuck in the moment dealing with his suffering, and he is not seeing the bigger picture, thinking about the good things in the past. And that's one thing I want to talk about in this video, is that this show, it's not really about a mystical, spiritual town. It's not this sci-fi thing. Of course, it is in the plot of the story itself, but really, this show is addressing what it feels like to live in the world we live in now. Because where Julie ends up later in the episode, she's talking about how everything just seems random and we're just here to suffer. A lot of people reach that point in the real world. A significant portion of people just think that way and have this inclination towards nihilism. And that vision of looking overhead and seeing the positive thing, when you see the big picture, it might start to make sense. And this is how even Tabitha, when she's talking to the priest in the first episode of this season, she can't see anything but her own suffering. She doesn't see the bigger picture of all the things, all the dominoes that were set for her to have a purpose out in the real world. I think that we're getting to some real world themes here just through the lens of this supernatural world that we're existing in this show. So I think it's great. And they end up, laughing about the things that they're going through. And they get to a new place, and Elgin's talking about how the woman that he's seeing after talking to Julie about it, maybe he's actually not afraid of her. Maybe she's an angel. And he talks about his grandma and Bible stories about angels and how the angels in the Bible would always say, do not be afraid, because the way they're described, if you look up biblically accurate angels, it's kind of a meme that's been going around the internet for the last few years. But Elgin is talking about how they appear scary at first glance, so they have to say, do not be afraid. And now he's not thinking of the kimono lady as somebody who might be trying to hurt him. She just needs help. So I think this is a new realization to him, even though he doesn't necessarily phrase it that way. Because earlier, when he was trying to attack Julie, obviously he's not thinking of the kimono-wearing lady as something benevolent. So there's something to that, I think. And here we have the disastrous meeting where things are starting to fall apart, of course, and it's that danger of hope again. So Boyd is trying to control this sense of hope. Boyd is in the middle between chaos and order. He is the one trying to keep order, but he also recognizes that they need hope to stay alive. And hope is something that, if it's taken too far, is going to cause people to do things that aren't going to keep them safe. So he is trying to stop people from wanting to go to the tree, because the tree just sends you to a random place. He, in the first season, was sent at the bottom of a well where he was not able to get out easily. So he knows the dangers of this tree, and everybody else is just looking for answers. And they blame Tabitha for not getting help, even though it's kind of absurd, because what are people going to be able to do? They never got to this town on purpose. There doesn't seem to be any record of this town existing other than the people who disappeared, right? So there doesn't seem to be a way for people to help, even if they believed her, and that's a big if. So they're kind of blaming her, but you understand from their perspective just all the suffering they've been through. You understand why Dale wants to leave. You understand why Fatima is blaming Tabitha for not doing something more. Although in this scene, Fatima is kind of hard to like, and I have to wonder if it's the situation with the baby and she knows something's wrong, that she's feeling a little extra desperate in this moment, even though, we can think logically about what Tabitha did, and she was trying to do the right thing, and that people don't even see the significance of the bottle tree that she was trying to go to. They call it just a walk in the park that she was trying to do. So it's hard to get people to see the bigger picture in this moment, and it does not end well. So I really like Jade's line, by the way, this episode, where he says, any meeting with more than 3 people is a waste of time. That's really just him being a tech bro guy. You just know all the meetings they have. It's just a really funny line. But now Tabitha's returned, and she wants to take Jade to the bottle tree. And this is kind of her feeling guilty about not being able to complete her mission, because if she completed her mission back in the real world, she would have more answers for people. And just the fact that everyone was mad at her, she understands it, I think, because she has this guilt. So she's trying to complete that mission here by taking Jade there. Maybe Jade can figure something out. But Jim's obviously against it because he wants to keep the family together now, because when they were separated, he wasn't holding his composure. He wasn't giving Julie what she needed. He wasn't, giving Ethan what he needed. So things are starting to fall apart. And here we have Ellis talking to his father, and Boyd points out the difficulties of leadership and holding these responsibilities on your shoulders, because everybody in that meeting is so quick to point out somebody else's mistakes and question Boyd's leadership, but they aren't necessarily taking the place of Boyd in that moment. There isn't somebody else to do what he's doing. And he is trying to get through to Ellis here. If they go to this tree, somebody's going to get sacrificed. And who are we willing to sacrifice? It's really just about getting that sense of responsibility onto Ellis here. And here we have a really nice scene with Julie and Elgin. And I thought they were going to find something spooky down here. Maybe the puppet's going to be down here. But it ended up just being a really nice scene where they're having fun and looking through old stuff and taking pictures of each other. It's definitely a nice scene, and it feels like they're going to end up, having a great bond later, whether it's romantic or just platonic. It doesn't really matter. But really, it's coming to a new understanding of the suffering they've been through and how that brings people together. So again, it's this theme of there's not just random suffering out there, that there is like a purpose, there is a bigger design behind everything, and I think that is what this is supposed to mean. But it does get me wondering if there's not going to be a tragedy coming up soon, because that's how it goes. People will show happiness. It's not going to last very long. So here we have a scene with Acosta, the officer here who killed somebody, and she's thanking Boyd because in the meeting, Boyd was like, it was an accident, and tried to get people off her back. And I think the motivation there in the meeting was that he knows that if he indulged his feelings in that moment, that he was directing this anger towards this officer, that it might have gotten out of hand. It might have turned into like a riot or people trying to round her up or beat her up or something. So he had to step in that moment to maintain order. But in this moment, he is now lashing out at her. But I think it's less about what she did, even though, of course, she did a bad thing and isn't going to be forgiven for it. It has more to do with just him lashing out that he's losing control. And she's pointing out that there is a way to keep order in the town by giving people something to do, a mission. Even if it's not worthwhile, we need people to stop thinking about this tree so that they can keep their minds occupied and feel like they're contributing to something. And the officer is talking about a moment in the past where there's a hurricane and the local sheriff or somebody did that there. So in this moment, you see he turns his back on her, and on his face, I'm pretty sure you can see him say, yeah, she's right. I do need to think of something for people to do. Even though he just lashed out at the officer. Now we have Ellis finding out about Fatima, and there's something wrong with the baby that she was going to drop eventually. She couldn't keep sneaking away without him finding out. So it was inevitable, but that's all we get there. Something's going to happen with it. Here we have Henry looking up at the sign and asking a question I'd always wondered, which is, there's a motel, a sign for a motel, but there is no motel. What does that mean? Is it just random? And again, it's just this chaos versus order concept. Is it just random, or is there a greater design, a greater meaning behind things? He's just questioning that. It's a small detail, but that's definitely representative. And it's also to remind us that there is a pool here, because the end of the episode. And here we have Ethan talking to Henry about Victor, about how Victor keeps people at arm's length. He says we can't be friends anymore because he's trying to protect himself because of all the suffering he's been through. He's trying to protect himself in that little cocoon of loneliness. And then we break through that in this scene here with a beautiful reunion scene where Victor's crying that he didn't think he could get back home. And it was just a very cathartic scene. And here we have Boyd and Bacta, I believe her name is. She was the bus driver. And she is just kind of affirming to Boyd that she sees what he's trying to do. She understands that he's trying to keep people safe, and she's going to back him up next time, even though in the meeting she was questioning him a little bit. So she's grown to understand it. And Boyd is here basically just stewing in the guilt he has about the Randall situation. So I think that is definitely going to get worse, not better, right? And here we have the bottle tree. We're looking at the pieces of paper, and we're seeing the 4 numbers on all the pieces of paper, and something that we as fans have speculated is that these were all years that were on these sheets of paper, especially because there seems to be a lot of things displaced from time. We have Civil War soldiers and some of these weird hallucinations. We have like old-fashioned sailors that the creatures are looking like. We have seemingly all these things from different points of history finding themselves in this town. So that's what we thought. Turns out no, because there is one note that has a future year, like 26 something. So is that a year? No, but Jade thinks that there is a pattern and there is a meaning to getting all these sheets of paper and finding out what these numbers mean. He tells her about the kids and the hallucination with the symbol that he sees and the Akui and all of that, and he's saying that there is something that pulls all these things together. So I think that we're going to find out more. They're going to reveal something by the end of this season with the symbol, with the kids. We'll have to find out soon. But here Dale goes into the tree, and it ends up being the worst possible scenario. And I love this reveal, the suspense value, where you just wonder what's happening. You know, I was like, it could be anything. It could be Fatima dealing with the baby or something. Like, something is going on here, and it ends up with Dale, and he just appeared inside the pool, and he is going to just get crushed by the rocks and the cement. Boyd pulls out his gun in desperation. He just thinks, maybe if I shoot a few parts of the concrete, it'll start to fall apart. And I just wanted him to run in and start ripping off parts of the rock here. He kind of realizes that it's hopeless and that there's nothing he can do. And we just see like blood drain down, which to me shows he was dead before Boyd even got over there, really. And then Boyd turns around and he uses this as an opportunity to pretty much just do an I told you so. Like, this is what could happen if you don't listen to me. And he's almost using it to maintain a sense of control. And it doesn't necessarily feel like he, in this moment, is really feeling the impact of this. He's almost like relieved that he's able to use this to his advantage until Donna shows up and he sees like a sense of panic in Donna's face, and he's knowing that she's breaking down as well. And if Donna breaks down, if Donna questions his leadership, all of these things, like Donna doesn't say anything to Boyd in these moments, but we know what she's thinking based on the performances here. And if Donna doesn't believe in Boyd anymore and starts to lose hope, then everything's going to fall apart. And I think that Boyd realizes in the moment that he is actually working against the hope that he spent so long trying to build up. You know, he's telling people that there is a way to escape, and even in the meeting, he's like, we now have proof that we can escape, and yet he's trying to damper that. So in that moment, Donna had hope. Donna believed in him. She doesn't believe in him anymore, and now she's losing hope. She's losing belief in him. So it's a big moment here at the end of the episode, and I'm really, really curious where we're going with it next. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Big episode this week, a lot to break down. So let me know what you guys think and your theories and what you think is going to happen next week's episode. I would love to see it. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.